Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a deeply personal and honestly striking account of how everyday family dysfunction doesn't just stay in our heads, it can actually manifest as physical, bodily emergencies. It's a really powerful look at the intersection of trauma, family dynamics, and our autonomic nervous system.
So, can unresolved family friction actually dictate our physical health? That's the big question we're exploring today. But, instead of flipping through some dry medical journal or a clinical textbook, we're going to treat the author's intense, first-hand experiences as a real-time psychological case study to answer this exact question. The source material we're analyzing provides a direct window into a highly dysfunctional household, showing us exactly how a toxic environment literally rewires the body's baseline responses.
Section 1. The Mind-Body Connection. The text drops us straight into a chaotic, terrifying moment. The author's father, who's in his mid-70s, suddenly starts choking severely on his food downstairs, and we're talking so badly that his airway is almost completely blocked. Now, obviously that's a medical emergency in itself, but what we're really focusing on here is the visceral, automatic reaction this triggers from the author, who is upstairs listening to all this unfold. The author isn't just reacting to a sudden loud noise, as this quote captures perfectly, their body is literally being attacked by an old, unresolved state of tension. This precise physical reaction was entirely reminiscent of severe medical emergencies involving their highly sensitive younger brother who suffered from episodes of cyanosis and required frantic emergency hospital runs between the ages of 13 and 22.
Now, when this trauma response hits, the author doesn't just, hyperventilate or hide under the covers. Instead, their body essentially takes over in a series of completely involuntary actions. They experience memory loss, intense heat, and sudden emotional detachment, rushing downstairs to rapidly assess if an ambulance needs to be called or if test compressions are required. Their body just turns them into a machine built entirely for crisis management.
Section 2. Trauma and Dissociation. This mechanical crisis response gets put to the test again almost immediately. In a totally bizarre, cascading chain of events, a similar choking incident happens to the mother. She severely chokes during the first half of dinner and spends the rest of the meal coughing, leaving 80% of her food totally untouched. To handle the ensuing chaos, the author experiences dissociation. They literally describe feeling like a separate problem-solving entity had possessed them, forcing them to step back, detach from their own emotions, and observe the situation completely objectively just to try and fix the problem.
And wow, does this illustrate the bizarre paradox of this household? On a normal day, the everyday environment is just filled with silence, avoidance, and absolutely zero warm communication. The parents are entirely disconnected. But the moment trauma strikes and they enter crisis mode, they unify. They suddenly function like an elite medical team with everyone playing a highly specific, coordinated role without panicking. It is literally the only time the family aligns.
Section 3. A chilling empathy deficit. But, as you might guess, this crisis coordination has a pretty dark underbelly. Despite their ability to function in an emergency, there is a staggering lack of emotional reciprocity when the roles of the victims are reversed. There's just a fundamental void where basic human empathy should be. Think about it. When the father was choking, the mother frantically hit his back to save him. But when the mother violently chokes and struggles to breathe, the father, who the author notes struggles with communication and empathy, essentially ignores her distress. Instead, he just casually talks to himself about a violent scandal involving a baseball coach he's watching on TV.
And get this, when the father finally does acknowledge his choking wife, it is definitely not with comfort. He merely barks this instruction at her from the sidelines. Don't breathe from your mouth, breathe from your nose. The author poignantly compares this behavior not to a concerned husband, but to a trainer from a boxing anime shouting from the corner of the ring. It perfectly encapsulates the bizarre, detached reality of their family dynamic.
Section 4. Family Systems Theory Explained.
So, to make sense of all this madness, the author steps back and applies family systems theory. It's the idea that these cascading physical manifestations, the choking, the illnesses, aren't just isolated medical flukes. Instead, they're physical symptoms directly caused by their toxic, unhealed environment. The author hypothesizes that the mother's sudden, severe coughing isn't just a random cold, but a localized immune failure caused by the autonomic nervous system reacting to severe, long-term emotional friction. The stress of the environment is quite literally breaking down their physical defenses.
And this theory also extends to the author's late brother. He was incredibly sensitive, regularly overhearing his parents having these really dark conversations about finances and wanting to die. As a result, he physically absorbed the family stress, which resulted in cyanosis and severe fevers. And how did the father react to his son turning blue? By meditating cross-legged with his eyes closed, calling the medical emergency a message from the unseen world. It is a total, terrifying detachment from reality.
Section 5. The ongoing cycle.
After observing all of this, the choking, the empathy deficit, the historical trauma with the brother, the author turns the lens inward. They start questioning their own ingrained codependency and their desperate, anxiety-driven need to constantly fix the family's problems. This brings us to a highly specific, very telling moment. Within 5 seconds of the father's initial choking fit subsiding, the author felt an overwhelming impulse to fix his discomfort, immediately jumping online to spend roughly 25,000 yen on a Dr. Air massage roller just to ease his sciatica. But when the author silently places this expensive gift on the living room sofa, it's met with a freezing, uncomfortable silence instead of gratitude. No thank you, just a heavy, awkward air between the parents. To cope with this, the author coldly rationalized the 25,000 yen. They didn't view it as a failed gift, but rather as a tuition fee, the cost of admission to study this exact microscopic psychological dynamic firsthand.
This explainer really leaves us with a profound realization. The author admits to still suffering from intense anxiety, the kind that made them binge drink in college just to cope with making minor mistakes at a part-time job. It shows us that the ghosts of a dysfunctional family don't just stay in the past. They actively program our nervous systems. They dictate our health, our anxieties, and our daily reactions. So I leave you with this final thought to ponder. How deeply has your own environment programmed your body's baseline? It's something we absolutely all need to consider. Thanks for exploring this with me today.